I'm good.
So,
Just, you need a hand or you got one? This is really,
I must have read it, I don't know how many times, and went,
really think so. I think some of them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, good evening. I will call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, September 13th, 2021. First item for discussion is from the Clerk of Council. Ordinance 0055 2021.
Thank you. In June, this body passed a resolution for services, Resolution 16, for the Torres family. They'd like to annex property from Mifflin Township into Gahanna. The county commissioners approved a resolution in July, and the transcript is attached. I informed the body of receipt of their findings during a regular meeting of council in August, on August 2nd. And per the Ohio Revised Code, our office held that paperwork for 60 days. So the next step in the process is for this council to vote to approve or deny the annexation. And the applicants are present tonight to discuss their request for a waiver and emergency language, if you'd like to call them to the podium.
Okay. Someone want to speak from the applicant?
If there are any questions or concerns, be more than happy. Thank you, ma'am.
Maybe why do we need the emergency?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Emmanuel Torres. I am the oldest son of Johnny and Amelia Torres y Fuentes. My sister also present, Amy Torres. The reason for the request for the emergency and waiver is so we can transfer the property from my parents to my sister, who effectively will be the one developing the site to build a single-family home residence. The developers are on hold, waiting for that step to happen, and that will allow for the closing of that deal and also to begin construction and do as much as possible before winter arrives, which it's just around the corner.
No, it's,
Okay.
no, it's not.
I'm smiling underneath
It's
my
not.
other face.
It's
by the
not.
way.
It's nowhere near. It's not coming. It's,
You're in denial.
I'll be on my boat.
But if there are no other questions, I humbly and respectfully request your approval of this.
Anybody have questions?
No, I have no questions.
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so no questions, then we will have this on regular agenda for the next meeting.
I'm good with that.
Sounds good.
Okay, next items from the Director of Finance.
Good evening. Have a couple items here for you. The first one is a transfer of appropriations amongst various accounts. This was as we have done in the past. We projected out salaries and benefits to year end to figure out if any adjustments were needed based on employee changes. Those range from changement in employment status, full-time, part-time, changes in benefits, other items that kind of come up that might vary compared to what the appropriations were for the year. So the first action item is to transfer from the accounts listed to the accounts listed in the varying amounts.
Okay, any questions? Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Joanne. A couple of questions. Actually, it's really one question on a couple of different items. Can you talk a little bit about what drove the increased amount or the amount that requires the transfer between police and the marketing communications? That's an insurance line. I'm sorry, I don't want that one. Actually, so between police and finance full-time wages, and then between parks and development full-time wages?
So the finance full-time wages, if we have had a change in staffing. So we just recently had a management analyst that we hired, I think, spring of last year. I can't remember the exact hire date, but she's going on to school, so she's moving to a part-time position through the end of the year. In the meantime, we are going to be hiring another person full-time to cover that position, and we're changing it from a management analyst to a manager to better support my functions in the finance department.
So that's a 40,000 increase for the year for
Right,
the position?
because we're going to keep the part-timer on through the end of the year to finish up what she's doing. We'll bring the full-time person on, hopefully, if we can find a good candidate, early October or mid-October. So the combination of the two kind of requires an increase in our full-time wages, because we moved her down to part-time, but she needs to keep those part-time wages then we have the full-time person coming on.
And, okay, go ahead. And if you would talk about the parks transfer for development full-time?
Correct. So when I did the initial allocation for the new hires that were coming on, I don't know if I had an incorrect hire date for some of them, or if maybe the original amount that was offered may have differed from what I projected. But when I projected it out for the full year, that was just the shortfall that I was projecting.
And, it seems like, to me, that it would be cleaner if you just returned Parks Fund to the general fund and then reissued the money to the development rather than,
Well, it's all staying in the general fund, so I'm just moving it amongst general fund line items. So I basically I'm saying
know,
I
but
don't need it anymore for Parks and Rec. I now need it in the general fund for development.
I know, but somehow it doesn't sit well with me somehow moving it from one department to another. When we budget this department, then it should be, I mean, it seems like,
I could ask for supplementals, but it just seems to make more sense that if we have appropriations available to go ahead and transfer them.
maybe I'm just used to seeing, it seems like supplementals would be better to me, but I don't know I don't know.
Well, the funding isn't needed for Parks and Rec at this point in time, so it just seemed unnecessary to ask for a supplemental if we have appropriations available somewhere else that the other departments aren't going to need.
Nancy,
Yes, I'm sorry.
is that, the transparency is, I think, the thing that's we're trying to figure out here, because if you're just moving it, then we know that, but yet we, do we know everyone that's moved?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot since the beginning of the year that's changed since we originally set our staffing plan. I mean, I could report back all the changes that were made, but at the end of the day, we still need the funding in the right accounts so we could finish up the year.
I understand that. I just think I'm looking at, when we know something, we know it, and when we're not told something, we don't know it, and consequently, that can be a little bit difficult to explain. We didn't know that. Well, we're the money people, so we kind of want to know that. And I agree with, I see what you're doing, but I just wanted to bring that forward, that we could be prepared that this is going to be happening or whatever. And this is just within how many days that the transfer needs to be done. I mean,
Yeah, I used to do this twice a year, where I would go through and bring the transfers forward. It just so happened that I didn't do the mid-year. I just did this last projection.
okay, all right. Busy. You were a little busy? Doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you. Without getting too far down in the weeds regarding accounting and the esoteric world of government accounting, I did hear you say, Joanne, this is within the general fund, so this is going from an account that is within the fund from one account to the other. I would contend that we are being told about it now. This is the opportunity to ask about what it is. They are monies that have essentially already been appropriated, so maybe from a, for lack of a better word, an efficiency standpoint, as opposed to moving it back, doing a supplemental. This makes sense. I guess I don't, maybe it's because I'm a little bit familiar with the inner workings of government accounting that I don't have a whole lot of qualms about this. It's being presented to us. We're being asked to authorize the transfers between the accounts, and I would contend that the motivation is just to be a bit more efficient as opposed to the two-step process. Is that an accurate characterization of the request?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have no issues with it.
Thank you. Joanne, just for the record, these moving of funds from one account to another account, from a grand scheme of things, these are budget neutral, correct?
Correct.
Right. I share the same feelings as my colleague Mike Snetcher, so thank you.
I can go along with this, but I guess it seems to me that if this was within a department, I wouldn't have as much qualms as it going from parks to development. Because we budget, like say, this is not at all, but we budget $10,000, and so if the $10,000 is at the end of the year gone, we know parks spent $10,000. But this way, if you just look at it, if you were just looking at it, you say, well, parks spent $10,000. Well, no, they didn't, because parts of it went somewhere else.
Well, that would be actual that you would be looking at as far as spent. So you're always going to see the real actual that department. I'm not moving actual expenditures, I'm just moving the budget.
Right.
So you'll be able to clearly see how much each department spent at the end of the year compared to the adjusted budget. I mean, all throughout the year, we're making changes and adjustments, but you'll be able to clearly see, here was their amended budget as of the end of the year, here's what they actually spent. So I'm not moving any actual expenditures, just the appropriations.
Yes.
So just to piggyback off of what the director said there, in the comprehensive annual financial report, there's typically a section that shows precisely that. It's the initial budget, and then there's a second column that shows actual, and it accounts for all of these things that occur throughout the course of the year. And not only is it routine and common in the city of Gahanna, but it is routine and common virtually across the country. So that's a standard statement, and so it's the aggregate of everything that we're talking about, and happens pretty routine and regularly throughout, the municipal world. So if you wanted to see it, I guess I would just say that that's kind of where it is. And
Okay.
so anyway, we can talk about it offline if you want to.
Y'all can tell I'm not an accounting major. Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. So let's see, where are we going here?
How do you wanna
So we
do
just
it?
need a resolution. So anybody have a resolution on the regular agenda?
I'm fine with consent.
Okay, we could.
Oh, consent, okay. Okay, next one, Resolution 0032-2021.
So the first part of this is directly tied to that first action item. These are just two funds, the street fund and the sewer operating fund that didn't have available appropriations to transfer. So in this case, because there weren't available appropriations to transfer, I am requesting a supplemental appropriation for the street fund in the amount of $29,760. Part of that will go to their overtime account. As we're seeing how the rest of the year is playing out, we believe that there will be a need for additional overtime, and then for a shortfall on the insurance side. And then in the sewer fund, requesting $37,600, and that is going to be going to full-time, overtime, and insurance accounts. The second part was a separate analysis that was done over some other operating accounts. Department of Public Service and Engineering became aware of an amount due to the City of Columbus. If you recall, we went from quarterly to monthly billing. When that shifted the cycle, when they would stagger those quarterly bills, a lot of this would be collected and due early in the next year. With that pullback to monthly, it's already been collected for those services, and now needs to be paid to the City of Columbus for those services that they provide to us. So with that, this is a supplemental request for the SOAR fund for $700,000 in contract services to pay the City of Columbus for amounts already collected from residents for services.
So, okay, this is ordinance 0056. You skipped over a resolution. Did we not do the other resolution?
Well, these are both ordinances. These are both supplemental appropriations.
Right.
Am I out of order?
Yeah.
Oh,
From
sorry.
what we have, which is,
Sorry, I was going off of my report.
I know your report,
Not
and
the
I-
agenda.
Reports in
And
the
I'm-
opposite order,
I'm
sorry.
like,
I was
can-
doing the same thing.
I'm like trying
So-
to figure this, okay,
Yeah.
we got it, all right.
It's action too,
It's-
right?
it-
Sorry, been out of order.
That's okay. It gets confusing sometimes.
Specifically, what did Joanne just speak to?
Ordinance 0056, 2021.
Yeah, sorry.
Not the second resolution. Okay. Anybody have questions about ordinance 0056, 2021, the supplementals?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. Are you all okay with regular agenda? Okay, so we'll do regular agenda. All right, now we'll do
Now we're back on
resolution.
track. Sorry.
That's okay.
The last item is a resolution accepting amounts and rates. This comes from the Franklin County Budget Commission and is a result of the tax budget that we filed with them in July. Basically, what it does is allows them to establish our rates and distribute our 2.4 mils between the general fund, bond retirement fund, and police pension fund.
Any questions?
No.
Michael?
Joanne, that's unchanged year over year, is that correct? It's kind of our allocation that we've been relying upon? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Consent on that one.
are we okay on consent? Okay, next, thank you. Next, items from the Director of Public Service and Engineering.
Good evening. I'm pretty sure the first item is the sanitary sewer evaluation survey that was presented two weeks ago. So a brief recap on that. As you all know, back in 2020, there was a significant storm, two significant storms that caused sewage to back up in over 100 homes in the city. So we immediately reacted to that and initiated a sanitary sewer evaluation survey that is tasked with putting together flow models of the sewers, as well as monitoring the flows and the sewer's response to wet weather events. The sanitary sewer evaluation survey for phase 1 is still ongoing, but we already have some preliminary results that showed a significant response in the sewers on the west side of Gahanna, primarily Royal Manor and Brentwood. There was two smaller but decent-sized storms earlier this year, and the sewers reacted fairly significantly to them. So we want to take advantage of the last few remaining weeks and months of dry weather this year and move forward with the second phase of this, which is smoke and dye testing. The smoke and dye testing is tasked with finding the actual sources of infiltration and inflow of groundwater and rainwater into the sewers. So it is going to go around and it's going to point out, downspouts and sump pumps and cracks and holes and all those areas that could cause rainwater and groundwater to infiltrate in. One of the other tasks of phase 1 was determining the areas to move into phase 2. So phase 1 included 3,000 homes. This first step in phase 2 is about 1,000 homes, so it's about a third of the area. So we've already been able to whittle that down a little bit to the direct area that is of a concern. When council passed the budget last year for 2021, included in that was appropriations for phase 2. So we are not requesting any additional funding for this.
Questions?
So phase 1 comprised putting meters in the different sewers, right?
Yes, sir.
How long were the meters in place?
How long have they been in
Yeah,
place?
Yeah.
Since August or July of last year. Yeah, about 12 months.
So okay. As I recall, the report from Burgess Nyepel was supposed to be concluded in 8 months per their original agreement.
Yes.
So why the delay on that?
So last year we had a drier, last fall was drier than what we expected. So we had to keep them there longer to try and capture some more significant events that, would show a response in the sewer. And thankfully we did capture some events this spring.
Okay. And so we're basing all these flows off those meters. You said we've had some significant rainfall this year, but no more water and basement events?
We have not, thankfully.
Okay.
Any more?
Go ahead. Anybody else?
Any questions? Okay. I had a question, just procedure. Do we need to waive second reading since we already had first reading last times? So we don't need to have the waive second on there,
We
correct?
don't have to waive second, and the ordinance will have to be amended.
Okay. So
But we will
can
keep
amend
the
my-
emergency on.
you what? Oh, yeah, we still need the emergency. This will be on regular agenda
So we can just amend by substitution.
at the meeting on Monday? Correct? Okay. Amend by, okay, all right. All right. Next one's 0052, 2021.
This second item from Public Service and Engineering is the seeking authorization for the mayor to enter into contract with EMH&T for the 2021 through 2023 Sidewalk Maintenance Program Administration Contract. Following the adoption of our Sidewalk Maintenance Program Code earlier this year, we sought consultants to assist us with this program and received a number of responses from those consultants and have elected to move forward with EMH&T as the most qualified firm. Part of this contract will include them conducting an inspection of the area to be part of the program. They'll then move forward to construction administration of the capital project run by the city, and then follow up with that administration with legislative support to bring back to this council body the resolution of necessity, which will identify the properties that are in need of maintenance, and then following that, the actual cost of work performed on each property. So cost estimates initially on the resolution of necessity, and then the actual cost of work being performed that will support a special assessment legislation. EMH&T has completed similar projects for a variety of Central Ohio communities, including Upper Arlington, Westerville, Grove City, and the city of Columbus. They came highly qualified to do this support services, and as part of both the committee hearing on the 23rd of August and then the last formal meeting, we did receive a number of questions, some of which I'd like to respond to and go through and hopefully proactively get some of those cleared away. One of them from someone I believe who's present here was, why does Gahanna require a consultant to pursue this work? We have project managers, we have project administrators on staff, we have inspectors on staff. The key reason why we would need a consultant for this work is that we do not have people on staff who could run both this program and the city street program concurrently, because they would both operate in the same construction season. The folks that we are staffed with today primarily focus their efforts on the street program, and that occupies 110% of their time during that construction period. So we would need support from inspection standpoint, project administration standpoint to fulfill this program. The other important factor here is that EMH&T has been doing this for years in other communities. And as we launch this program, we may at some point learn to do it ourselves, have staff trained to do it ourselves, and it may financially make sense for the city and the residents that we do this work with city staff. But starting it out, we do need help in launching this program, relying on expert assistance to make sure that we get it right, that the legislation that we bring forward for the program is correct, and the program runs on time and on budget. It is a possibility that in future years, again, we do administer this project internally through our own staff, but in the foreseeable next couple of years, I don't believe that we are staffed to do that, nor do I believe that we would have the ability to train staff quickly to have them successfully manage this project. A number of the other questions we received was why the initial item on the 23rd agenda did not include two exhibits. There was a terms and conditions and an hourly fee. Those were part of one PDF at one point. We did provide those over to our city attorney to be reviewed, as we do with anything that we bring before council of a contractual nature. What occurred is a final draft was provided to us, and those two exhibits were not attached in the PDF that was returned. It's an oversight on us to attach it without including those other two exhibits. They were since provided, I believe, are on your agenda tonight. They are part of the overall agreement, so we apologize for not having them all combined together with the initial item on the 23rd. One thing that has caused a bit of confusion on this is that it is a 3-year contract with options for extensions. And so in reading the contract, it is titled the 2021 through 2023 Sidewalk Maintenance Program. And there's a fee and a scope of work associated with the 2021 Sidewalk Maintenance Program. That really becomes confusing when you go and read the extensions clause for this, that allows the contract to be extended onto future years up until 2023, or completion of the 2023 program. So to step back a moment and describe the process of the sidewalk maintenance program. In year 1 of any program area, so we'll do 2021, EMH&T will conduct inspections, provide mailers to residents, and we will begin the legislative process of starting a sidewalk program. In year 2 of that same 2021 program, construction will occur through the city-administered construction project. They will be on-site inspecting and administering that construction phase. In year 3 of the same 2021 sidewalk program, they'll do a warranty review. So all the work that was constructed in year 2, they will re-inspect to verify that the work held up and that the contractor who installed that sidewalk repairs can be paid their full amount, and identify whether there's repairs that need to be made during the warranty period. So each program area includes 3 years of effort. That cycle then repeats annually, so that in 2022, we would bring forth a 2022 sidewalk program area, but also in 2022, we are constructing the 2021 sidewalk program. So there's a bit of an overlap that occurs through these programs and through this contract. The important thing to note with this agreement is that the fees you see are based on the 2021 sidewalk program that does include work in 2022 and 2023. So the fee in this agreement is the totality of fees for 2021, 2022, and 2023. The consulting work associated with the 2021 sidewalk program. I know it's a confusing point. It takes a few reads to gather that from the contract, so I can appreciate that it's not a simple thing to grasp, but I hope that explanation helps clarify that.
Quick question.
Sure.
In simple terms, separate from nuance and specific where there could be an adjustment.
Yeah.
Assuming for a moment, just for the sake of conversation, the list that's in 21 happens to be the exact same list for 22. Is the 22 spend the same as 21?
No. So if you'll note in the fees section of this contract, the fees are negotiated for the scope of work that gets defined in the future years. So the fee that you see, that's the only fee being authorized in this contract, is the 2021 listing of streets. Future program areas, as they're defined, we will negotiate fees for those services based on the area that gets defined and the hourly rates that EMH&T has for the following years. It's fairly routine for consulting firms to update their hourly billable rates annually.
Yeah, I understand those changes, and trying to simplify so assuming they don't change their rates, assuming the footprint is the same, magically is the same, is the cost the same?
Yes.
So 73 spent in 21 for this, if it was the same, essentially mirrored 219 properties in 22, the totality of cost is the same, just assuming no change in rate.
Correct.
Nancy, if I may. Hey, Brian. So as I recall, this program was first proposed 3-4 years ago, and then came back last year and said it would probably take 15 years to do the whole city. But then you said it would take longer than 15 years to do the whole city because we couldn't do a full 15th of the city in the first year. So I'm assuming that this is a half of a 15th. And if we get this thing up and running, next year will be a full 15th. So it could be realistic to be double this next year. Is that accurate?
The request for next year's sidewalk program is $1.2 million in the CNAs that have been put forth for the 2022 budget. The appropriated budget for 2021 was $500,000. So yes, the request for next year and years beyond is for a 15-year program. This program is based on the budget that was appropriated for 2021, and the program area, the 219 parcels, which we'll get to on the next agenda item, is focused directly on those areas that were identified by the federal government's civil rights inquiry with Gahanna. This legislation that's coming up next is the final part in closing out the federal civil rights investigation for the maintenance of those particular sidewalks in the program area that we're proposing for 2021.
219 or 235, because EMH&T's proposal is based on 235.
Correct, yeah, they based an assumption of 235 based on the lane miles of streets identified here. The 219 is the specific program area that will be, that we're seeking a resolution to adopt.
And that's 235 parcels that we know have a problem? That's just 235 in the area?
Correct,
Okay.
235 in the area.
So they've based this program on parcels that may not have a problem?
Yes.
Okay. And that number's already gone down, so the cost per parcel has gone up from this proposal? Or are they going to adjust, their fee from 235 to 219?
Yeah, so the fees in this program, the fees that you see on here, although they're summarized as a lump sum per task, they are not to exceed fees based on an assumption of 235 parcels. Their hourly billing for the services rendered is based on Exhibit B of this agreement, that is their hourly rates. So if there are opt-outs of the program, if there is a reduction in the parcels, as there has been in this case, their fees for performing those services that are directly linked to work on each parcel would go down based on them not performing the work they anticipated.
Mr. Renner, have you ever had a consultant give you a not to exceed and not use it all?
I couldn't hear you.
That's a tricky question, but.
You know what I'm saying.
No, but you
If we-
manage it, and if you manage it well, then you don't actually get those numbers.
But we're not managing this program. Again,
John is.
okay,
We're managing the contract.
okay.
If I may,
No, go ahead. You go first.
go ahead. I've already spoken.
Okay. First, I just want to thank you, John. I think a lot of the information that you've presented has certainly helped me understand sort of what we're talking about and where we're going with this. As a sort of follow-up, so if I'm using the language correctly, the 2021 program is actually kind of a 3-year plan that takes 3 years to implement. And if we start a 2022 program, that would then also take 3 years to implement. Is that, yes?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and then, so the other communities that you referenced, how many program years do you know? How many program years have they used EMH&T? So like, how long should we expect to incur this cost before it could realistically perhaps come in-house?
So I know that some of the communities, I don't know that I have an exact answer to the question, but I do know that Westerville, for example, continues to use EMH&T. They have an on-staff person who manages their sidewalk program, and that is the bulk of that person's responsibility, yet they still rely on EMH&T for portions of the program services. So we may go that route, we may go a different route and take it on entirely. We may decide it's not economical for us to do that. Certainly for the $73,000 contract we have before us, in order to staff and pay the benefits and salaries of the personnel on staff to fulfill those duties, we couldn't compete with their fee. I do know that EMH&T has been assisting Westerville, I believe, for the better part of a decade, if not longer. They have been heavily involved in these programs in a number of communities for a number of years, but I don't have the exact duration of that service agreement.
And if I could, I would just add, I think each community is different, depends on revenue sources, depends on other staffing needs, et cetera. So you can get a general idea, but it's not going to be an apple and an apple.
Right, which is why I asked about just sort of a variety of the communities and just to get an idea of that type of duration of the relationship. But I think you answered, the important part I think you got at was that it can be reevaluated for each program year, and so we can sort of pick à la carte which types of program services we might need support from. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
We wouldn't necessarily need assistance on everything that is in their scope in this agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Moorhead, just two clarifying questions. EMH&T has done precisely this kind of work in other communities, not kind of this kind of work, right? They are running very similar programs. Westerville's, which is my understanding is it's kind of what the proposed sidewalk program in Gahanna is modeled after. They are managing that. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. And then just a clarifying question about the duration of the program. I remember last year when we were going through some of the funding projections, to Mr. Leesburg's point, there was discussion about 15 years to catch up. That was the best guess estimate. Considering we're at 500,000 now, construction of that 500,000 starts in 2022, and then the presumably forthcoming budget request in December for next year will be the 1.2 million, which is a 15-year run rate. Back of the napkin math, we're talking 15 and a half years. Is that approximately right?
Correct, yeah, based on what we had presented as funding projections, yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
I hate minutia. Actually, I do, or I don't hate minutia. But in any case, I
We know.
apologize. I got to get into a little bit of math for a second, just so I can understand better. Rough cost to install sidewalk is how much a foot, or whatever the measure is?
So the typical measurement would be a sidewalk panel, right? Like a 4-foot by 5-foot section, and to replace that fully ranges from $250 to say $300-ish. A repair of a panel, if we're just talking about what we'd be proposing is grinding down vertical offsets. That can be between $45 and $75 per sidewalk.
If I could, John, if you could perhaps refresh council's recollection about how we adjusted the expected cost for this program based on further research of options for replacing or repairing the sidewalks.
Yes, that's a good clarification. So initially, when we prepared this program presentation, we did mirror it on some neighboring communities and this type of repairs that they use. One thing that we did was engage one of those consultants to come and complete some repairs out front of City Hall and evaluate ourselves whether or not we felt that was an appropriate use here. Upon receiving their assumption cost estimates for the program of a scale that we're looking at, we were able to revise the annual cost of a 15-year program downwards from about $1.6 million to $1.2 million.
What I'm trying to get to is an understanding of overhead. What I see the program that we're describing is put on the table is an overhead cost, because it doesn't actually fix anything. It's all the work associated with identifying, notifying, following up, inspecting, et cetera. There's 219 parcels. Do we have an understanding of, after the assessment that's been done so far, understanding it's not a perfect assessment, it was relatively high level, and as a general statement, do we have an understanding of the portion of this that is expected to be bad and have an action taken? Is it 100% of this list? Is it?
We, based on the initial inspections we conducted in 2019 and 2020, we made an average assessment of the city that roughly 30% of all sidewalk panels would require some form of repair or replacement. So it would be a fairly safe assumption to say that every property within this program area may have one, at least, condition that required maintenance.
Panel.
Panel, at least one panel, I would assume, within every property here.
What I'm trying to get to is, and without being to the penny, is typical property is how big? How much lineal feet or how much sidewalk feet?
In Gahanna, the average frontage of sidewalk is about 90 feet.
So 90 feet, do the math of 250 a panel, 90 feet is a 5-foot panel. 4-foot width, 5-foot panel. That's going to be somewhere in the realm of $4,800. If it's a third of that, then the cost of repair is going to be roughly $1,500, and we're looking at $300 per $1,500 in overhead. That's about roughly 20%.
Yeah, we made an initial assumption in the budget numbers of roughly 25% cost in administration for this program. So that, I haven't worked through the numbers as you have, but that sounds
I haven't either,
ballpark.
other than scribbles.
I get $335 per parcel.
Correct.
Over 219 parcels.
That's over the 219. If we've only got 30% of that, it jumps up to 10,000 or
No.
1,090.
No.
290.
30% of the 219 parcels would need repairs. So then you get $73,000 divided by 67 parcels.
Is that right? Would that be correct? Actually, it's not exactly correct. It's a
So
mix.
30% of all panels, so we assume it's 100% of all parcels would have a panel.
Understood.
If I could clarify one point with the administrative costs on this. So we do not pass on the administrative cost of city staff time doing sidewalk inspections through folks routinely doing their work, or those who
Or any
opt
other
out through this
inspection.
program. And in a world where we may someday staff at the city to administer this program, those staff costs would not be passed on. So we do routinely in operating through our capital projects use staff time and use administrative
Absolutely.
costs for things like this. Another important point is that this is not unlike other utility and capital maintenance needs, where we, the city of Gahanna, are federally mandated to maintain sidewalks within Gahanna. This program is one of the mechanisms we're using to maintain sidewalks, but we have an obligation to maintain these sidewalks. And not discounting the point that it does cost money and that portions of what gets budgeted goes towards making this happen. But I think it's also a debate of, does that money get spent on staff or does it get spent on a consultant? And what's the best use of that money? Because it's some world it has to be spent to make this program happen.
So I do understand that there is either embedded cost or contracted cost. Totally understand that. One point of clarification. We are federally mandated to fix the sidewalks, or federally mandated to make sure that sidewalks are maintained?
The latter.
So it's the property owner's direct responsibility. It's our responsibility to oversee and look for issues and problems.
The other part of that is that the person that is going to have it done is going to be paying for it. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
And we've already said it
if I may,
before.
I support solving a problem, and I support a means of assisting our citizens without getting hit with a significant cost in a negative moment. Because no matter what, this will be a negative moment when somebody comes by and says, this needs to be repaired, and it's been here for more than a week, based on our history. So I do understand that, and I support finding a solution for that. At the same time, I'm trying to justify if we step back in time, magically if we could, and if we monitored and identified over time and managed that process over time, this would be a routine part of business without any additional overhead. And that's a historical perspective. Had that been done, it had not been done. We have a need to get caught up. And are we looking at a means of filling a gap? Or are we looking at something that becomes the new norm, which is now an additional cost to incur? How do we find the answer to that? That's what I'm trying to get to. At the moment, the perspective is this is 3 years plus potentially 3 years. Feels less of, it feels more of we're now adding an embedded cost in perpetuity. Conceptually, that's how this is being looked at. And I'm trying to understand how do we solve that for something that really should be routine of business as it is in today's, from a cost perspective today.
If I
All
could-
of this started with simply a means of helping citizens afford the fix that they're already obligated to do on their own. That's really the bottom line of what the intent of this was, unless I'm mistaken in the history of our conversations.
If I could, so my understanding for the last 20 months is that council wanted a sidewalk program, a sidewalk maintenance program to provide an accessibility tool to assist the homeowners who are state mandated, obligated to take care of their sidewalks. So we worked for the last, well, for about 15 months, creating a sidewalk program that we presented to council that was adopted by council. So at this point, we are presenting a contract for EMH&T so that we can implement and administer that program. I would respectfully disagree that had we done this several years ago, we'd have no overhead. We would.
I'm
'cause
talking about 20 years ago. I'm
20
referring
20
to
years, but at
historical
some
over
point,
time.
we would have had overhead because we would have to add staff to administer and implement and manage that program. So there would be some level of staffing that somewhere along the line would have been added over the last 20 years to assist with this program. We've already heard that Westerville now, they implemented their program and now has a full-time person on duty on staff whose only job is to manage and implement their sidewalk program after a 15-year period. So at some point, you're going to have that overhead. And I'm going to reiterate a little bit, this is some of the points that Mr. Moorhead made. At this point, my understanding is the administration is tasked with getting a program up and running. We can either hire somebody out of the gate, which we will never be able to touch, salaries and benefits for $73,000, and start from scratch without really knowing what we're doing in a very detailed program for which we have federal obligations with the Federal Highway Association right now that are subject to the resolution of a civil rights complaint. Or we can engage a consultant who has done this in multiple other municipalities, effectively gotten it up and running, and manage them as they run this program so that we can operate it and implement it to the best of our ability so that it benefits the residents. So I just want to make sure that we are taking a step back and looking at what the issue is in front of us today. The sidewalk program's already been adopted. So how do we best implement that and get that up and running? And our request to council is to authorize us to engage EMH&T so that we can allow them to implement and administer this program effectively, not only in terms of time and operational efficiencies, but also in cost efficiencies. Because right now, that is the most cost-efficient way for us to go forward.
So I think where I am right now is, in all likelihood, I can support a one-year contract with renewals, not beyond that.
Wait, Stephen was next?
Yeah, thank you. John, I appreciate some of the clarification that you did on this and enlightening us that a program is 3 years. So the first year, the second year is when construction activities happen, and then the third year is when inspection or the warranty happens. When I read this proposal, and I look at the various tasks and the fees, and then I'm listening to you, I'm trying to ameliorate in my head the 3 years. So the 73,000 is spread over the 3 years, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And can you help us understand, obviously, the first several tasks are going to be happening in the first year, or maybe I shouldn't say obvious, but can you help us understand the variety of tasks and what year they're going to be in?
Yeah, I can help you with that. So as you mentioned, in this contract agreement, there are a number of services identified. They are numbered, and what I'll do is go through those numbered services, they're 1 through 9, and try to identify when those would be expected to occur. So tasks 1 through 2, as you mentioned, those are kickoff tasks. Part of EMH&T's services here is helping the city develop the documentation, public notifications that we can use for all future years. So these wouldn't be recurring tasks, it's just a one-time help us start this program. Tasks 1 through 2 would occur this year immediately upon execution. Tasks 3 through 5 are the inspection phase, right? The first year phase of going out, inspecting the sidewalks, identifying which property owners have deficiencies, preparing those deficiencies, and then developing cost estimates for them that they will provide both to the residents and to the city. So tasks 3, 4, and 5 are the first year. Tasks 6,
Excuse me, John, when you say first year, that's 2021?
correct, the first year of a 3-year program. So in this case, it would be 2021.
Okay.
Task 6, 7, 8, 7 has many processes in it, but tasks 6, 7, and 8 are all during the construction phase. With one note that task 8, the inspection, will also lapse into year 3. So the majority of the work here is occurring in year 2, with a minority of it happening following in year 3. So some of the inspection, some of the contract administration will be linked to the warranty period, but the majority of this is in year 2 of a program where they're actively observing the construction and developing the paperwork. The legislative support, item 9 here, that occurs both in years 1 and years 2, potentially year 3, but we don't think that's likely to occur. That is developing the resolution of necessity, the program area exhibit, and attendant address listing, which you'll see later tonight. It's also bringing forward the special assessment with the exact costs to be assessed to each property. So those services are broken out over a time period. The majority is year 2, some is year 1. Year 3 is relatively light in terms of the work through this agreement.
Okay,
Well, wait, I'm sorry, I just wasn't
Well, go
finished.
ahead.
Did you want to piggyback on that, or?
well, I wanted to piggyback that in year 1, we're starting that, so it goes for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Year 2 has year 2 and year 1 of the next time. So you're building these up like this, like a brick wall. And so, I mean, I think there's going to be lots of things going on all the time. But each year you're getting more. And then finally in the 3rd year, one drops off, but now you always have 3 moving on.
Yes,
Okay?
that is correct. Yeah, there will be 3 active programs in any given year once this is operating on a long-term basis.
So, okay, so thank you. I am now understanding what a 2021 program actually means. So when this proposal and when you, because it has verbiage in here about a 2022, so are some of the year 1 2022 activities going to be, is EMH&T going to be utilized via this contract?
Yes, this contract provides the option for the city to extend it to cover the year 1 2022 and the year 1 2023 services.
Okay, I think that's where I have a little bit of a disconnect. So if I understood originally what you said, that with year 1, 2, and 3, year 1 starting in 2021 for the 2021 program, when does the 2022 program start?
Well, it starts in 2022, but it is year 2 of the 2021 program, if that helps clarify.
So in 2022, we would be doing the construction for the 2021 program and conducting inspections for the 2022 program.
Okay, so therefore, we will still be using this
Correct.
to pay for those activities?
No, the
No, it would be another-
2022
3-year.
inspection would be negotiated as a separate
Right.
fee based on the program area of 2022, the number of parcels
Okay.
included, and
So you will need another entity to come in and help you unless you can learn internally from this what you need to do or ask staff for more additional staff.
this contract itself provides for an extension to do the 2022 services. So we could extend it and allow EMH&T to perform those services, or we could, in theory, staff to provide those services in 2022.
So thank you for that clarification. Now I understand. I'm in support of the 2021 program as defined. I'm not in support of any kind of extension or being able to have any kind of extension whatsoever. I think we need to be able to use this to learn. I fully understand getting contractors, engineering firms to assist us. I do it all the time every year, as Mr. Leesburg. But there does come a time when you have to start learning to do what is it that I can do inside, my department. And if you need additional staff, then come budget season, come the fall, ask for more staff, and for the purpose of this. But just for the record, I am in full support of the 3 years via this proposal. You keep calling it a contract, but I must have a different attachment. I don't see a contract. I see a letter of proposal and some terms and conditions and that kind of thing. So maybe there's another document, or Mr. City Attorney can speak to that.
No, it's a proposal. The city council approves bids or proposals.
Okay.
It's my job to approve the contract. So once you approve the terms of this proposal, I would then approve the contract. The mayor would then sign the contract.
That's the chain.
Yeah.
Got it.
Lots
Okay.
of times, a contract is attached, and so that's
Right,
might be
right,
some of the
that's what I'm used
confusion.
to. Okay.
But it doesn't have to be attached. Just the proposal is all you're approving.
Okay.
If you approve.
This particular proposal also has the terms and conditions, and I would note for council, to the extent that you have concerns, there is a termination provision in the terms and conditions that this contract can be terminated upon 10 days written notice. So if we were to proceed with this proposal and we move into a contract as outlined, in the event council down the road is not comfortable with continuing and we can't negotiate a comfortable fee year after year, we can terminate this relationship, this contract upon 10 days written notice. So if that were to give you any level of comfort in that, I just wanted to point that out to you, that is within the terms and conditions.
Nancy? Stephen, I want to say, you're saying we should do 2021 and finish the 3 stages without moving on to starting another one in 2022. Am I correct?
No, it would, if we need, from what I understand, we would need another proposal/contract. Is that correct?
No.
In order to do the 2022 program?
We would need to refresh this agreement, yes, to include the services for the 2022 program.
Right.
So there would be another $73,000 that would be going.
Over 3 years.
For that, for the next 3 years.
So each 1 year of a sidewalk program is $73,000. So for the,
Well, for 219 parcels.
correct. So for
We
the
assume next year-
2021, as the 2021 program, it starts with inspections this year, construction in 2022, warranty review in 2023, that is $73,000. Those 3 years' worth of work on the 2021 program.
And they're paid at the beginning, I'm assuming, or do they pay at the end? They aren't going to get paid
Well,
till the
it's,
third
if I
year?
remember, it's an hourly billing rate.
They are paid as the work
work's done.
progresses.
I still want to get back on this because 2021 has 3 years that ends up in 3. 2022 starts with one not being done, okay? And so that's another $73,000 for the next 3 years. And then in the next one, the third one, you're going to be having 3 working out, 73,000, 73,000, now another one. And then suddenly, one of them will drop off. Number 1 will have dropped off, but you still are moving on with the other one. So it's continually going.
Okay.
And
But we need to pay them every time we get a new 3-year contract. We'll need to have a new 3-year contract every single time, which could potentially be double the 73,000 next year, because the
Could be
area
more.
should double. We've got $500,000 in sidewalk this year and $1.2 million, which is more than double, next year. So the 73,000 is not going to cover double the amount of sidewalk next year or the years after that. This was a half of a 15th, according to the report last year.
so what would happen if after the first 3 years of 21 going, it's 3 years, we say, no, we don't want to do this anymore? We can't do that.
Stephen's
We're
saying,
saying we want this.
Suggesting we do it in-house.
Stephen's saying we learn how to do it ourselves and not pay them.
Oh, well, I can, I knew you were saying that, but still, we're still going to continue the way, we're going to continue the program.
Yeah.
So no matter who does it, whether
Yeah.
it's EMH&T or it's the other, and it
I'm not
seems to me that
disagreeing.
you should be able, to do more than one, just not, more than one. How do I want to put this? You should be able to do just the very beginning, the first thing you're doing on the thing, and then do other things besides that. That, we have 269, what did you say, 296, 269?
219 parcels.
209, thank you,
Is that what you wrote?
219 parcels. It's going to take them that long to come up with, in 1 year, to, just find them? I don't think so.
The rest of this year. This is for this year's program. They're going to do that this year. Then next year, they'll identify another section.
Well,
and
so
do
this
that.
is year one then?
Yeah.
Okay. But still, that takes 269, or 219, a whole year? I just don't see it.
Okay. Brian?
I can show you 219 right now, real close to my house.
There was a piece of this that I didn't capture until Mr. Renner asked a couple of his questions. I just want to make sure I understand correctly. This contract is specifically about, from end to end, the entirety of the 3 years is specifically about the 219 parcels in it,
Yes.
and a new contract in its entirety will have to come forward to council for 2022 to review those roughly 400 parcels to begin the 2022 program and go forward. Is that correct?
I believe that this agreement and the contract that Mr. Malarski referenced includes a provision to extend this contract to provide those services in future years. At an option, right? At an option of the city to
Well, it
pursue
is-
that extension.
3 years plus 3, it's not clear on what that means in the context of year one's 219 parcels. I'm totally fine with a program end-to-end being a part of the agreement. That's logical and makes sense. I'm okay with that being for year one, because this is an emergency, it has to be done right now, that delivery. What I would then expect is, with the time and the knowledge that is learned, the 22 program, the 22 contract is brought back to council with, here's what happened in year one, here's what we're expecting to happen in year two for year one, and here's why we think we need to do this for the next round. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think I understand the concern that we're going to just get into a long-term contract with a consultant to do these services year in and year out, and we do understand that. I don't expect that the scope of services necessary to do this work changes from year one to year two to year three and thereon. I think we're looking at the services necessary to do this work, whether it's through this consultant, through another consultant, or through city staff. The work required to operate this program is in this agreement here. So we could, in theory, bring back another contract to present before you in year two for a different program area, a larger program area, as expected, if the budget goes through as requested. But I think we'll have the same conversation in year two, and that may be okay. But I guess I don't fully understand what we would have different in the year two discussion about the contract, unless it is city staff running this program or is a consultant running the program.
In short, I think that's the point. It's the unknown. And so we have an emergency request for something that is critical to be done at this moment. Makes sense. There's reasons to do those things. But it's for a contract for 6 years. That's the stretch for me. I can't speak for my peers. So if this is for 2021's identified parcels, 2021's notifications, 2021's inspections, 2022's cut out and build, 2022, 2023 cut out, build, inspect, and complete for the 219 parcels, makes sense to me. That's the emergency. That's the thing. Let's get it going. Mm-hmm. For 2022, that piece that starts, more lead time, more headway, review of what happened so far, Are the costs still in line? Do they still make sense? Because there's nothing in here controlling costs. It just says that H&T can adjust their pricing. So it's not like we're locking in cost. We're locking in scope. We're not going to change scope. We may simplify scope, but that gives us the opportunity to do that. If this is the 2021 set of parcels running across 3 years for the program to be completed, I'm good with that. Anything that would be identified outside of this would be part of a new discussion. That's my perspective.
Michael?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've just jotted down some notes here. I want a couple of points just so they don't get lost. Some of the stuff I think might be getting overlooked in the minutia. I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of it. Is one, the city is required to respond to a federal complaint. That is program year 2021. To avoid any confusion, let's just call that program letter A. That would span calendar years 2021 to 2023. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Two, the city does not have the expertise at this time to administer such a program from the ground up. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Great. So using that as a predicate, I hope that we can come to some consensus to move forward with program year 2021 or letter A, for simplicity's sake. As the program, now I'll ask this question of the administration, anyone that wants to answer it, Madam Mayor, Mr. Moorhead. As the program years begin stacking up and they overlap, and perhaps we're managing 3 different program years in one calendar year, you have to imagine that the overhead following this contractual model is going to be something in excess of $100,000 per year in administrative expenses. Then perhaps it may make sense to explore adding city staff, bringing some of the overhead in-house. In your opinion, is that a reasonable hypothetical?
Yeah, I think reasonably there's an element of these services that could be done in-house.
Okay. So I guess as I've listened to the discussion here, I'd like to come to a consensus that we should move forward with letter A, program year A or 2021, and then explore, again, as the overhead begins to grow, the scale increases, and it is large enough to warrant it, and once staff have seen how this is administered, exploring adding staff at a later date, which I believe is very much similar to what Mr. Renner was talking about, and perhaps seeing some heads nod, so maybe that is the path forward. But I don't know. I was getting a little frustrated as I was listening to the conversation. It seemed we're getting very deep in the details, and yet we have something that we must do, and personally I'd like to move forward, and it seems that that may be the logical path forward.
Do you think that 1 year is enough for you to know, or should it be 2 years, 2 project years, to know, for you to understand and figure out what you need to do? Seems like 1 year to me would not be enough to know what you would actually need as far as a staff person to do it. It seems like if you had this year with like a smaller area, and then 2022 with twice that area, and then after that, for 2023's project year, maybe then that's when we need to look at, can we have a staff person? What's the difference? Because this is only a partial year.
I would agree with that, and that was my concern, is that until we actually go through one full cycle of a sidewalk program, from the implementation, the inspections, the construction work, the warranty review, and you see what is needed in each of those phases, we have an extremely talented staff, but I also know we did the largest street program in city's history this year, and the budget request is going to have an equal-sized one for next year, and I know the burden it put on our staff. So to sit and think that by this time next year, we'll be able to, well, actually earlier than this, we'll be in a position to say, we've got this down, we're ready to go. We will not be anywhere near that, and we'll be back here bringing another contract forward. I would submit that at least a two years' worth of sidewalk programs would be enough, at least to give us a head start to try to understand what this entails, what kind of workload this entails, what kind of skill set is needed for this. So I'm looking at this as a contract for whether it's right now it's proposed as 3 years worth of a sidewalk, 3 years of sidewalk programs. The vernacular is very tricky here, which would take up to 6 years. If you're not comfortable with 6 years, I understand that for the reasons that have been articulated here, but I would submit that perhaps 2 years would be more realistic in terms of what we can actually accomplish and garner. But I will look to Director Crawford and Mr. Moorhead.
Can I ask one other question? they say it's a 3-year program. Okay, so that's 22, but then it says 3-year contract, so it's actually a 4-year program contract, correct? For 4 program years.
21 program, the 22 program, and the 23 program.
But it says there is a 3-year contract with the option to 3 separate year renewals. So,
So you get 3 more after that, so it could be 4
right,
years.
so that'd be
You're right.
4 years. Okay.
It's 2021 is a 3-year contract.
Right.
For program area A, we'll
Right.
call it. Program area A, B, and C, being 2021, 2023, and 2022, are the 3 total years of contracts. So it can be extended up to 3 years. So that includes A, B, C, 2021, 2022, 2023 sidewalk programs.
But it says it's a 3-year program with the option of up to 3-year renewals. So wouldn't that be
3
4?
more extensions, that would be a
3
4-year
more
program.
extensions, that would be 4 program years.
That was the issue that I had reading this contract, and it took me, Mr. Crawford and I think we were on the phone for I don't know how many times, and finally went, I get it. So if the 2023 program starts with inspections in 2023, construction in 2024, warranty review in 2025, those are your extensions or until the 2023 program is complete.
Yes, I
That's
think.
how I read this contract.
Yeah, if you're looking at page 6 of this agreement, the extension of contract services clause here, the city may extend this agreement for up to 3 years or until such time as the 2023 sidewalk assessment program is completed.
Okay,
So it's up to 3 years inclusive of year 1.
all right.
And 2023 would end in 2025.
2020
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
23, 24,
Yes.
25.
All right, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I need to understand something. Because
Got this
Not
math
that we've-
stuff going now. We're really good. We're good. We've got
not that
this
we've moved
math
in,
stuff. Whoa.
what I just heard is that the entirety of this contract is for the 3 years that make up the work that is required to do the 2021 list of 219 properties. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Which means that the expenditure, rough numbers, of 2021, 2022, and 23 in their entirety become the 73,000, not 73,000 per year.
Yes, that is correct.
That's right. So the first year could be 15,000, second year could be 20, last year could be the remainder. Okay. That in concept, 2021, 2019 list of properties, portion of costs divvied out across 3 years, the work divvied out across 3 years, I'm okay with. The list and how this is laid out looks like it is 2021 inspection and work, 2022 inspection and work, 2023 inspection and work, and so on and so on.
Yes.
As in any case, as where we are right now, if it is the entirety of the scope of this decision and vote required is the 219 properties, then I'm okay with that. Which means in 2022, a proposal needs to come back to council for whatever is pictured as the program that begins in 2022.
And I would say that you could expect that to occur much earlier in the year.
Absolutely.
So what we would, to the mayor's point earlier of how many years would be necessary to kind of get a feel for what this program looks like in Gahanna, we will likely be presenting a 2022 program in, first quarter, end of first quarter,
Okay.
early second quarter next year.
Okay.
And I would also request that that be through this agreement, so that we can at least see it in this agreement of what that proposal would be, because the timing of seeking consultants through our professional services process, reviewing them, bringing them on board, and getting this process pulled together, having just recently done that for this agreement, I would not expect to see a different result. I would conclude if we were to seek an RFP for qualified firms to administer this program in 2022, we would be looking at an EMH&T contract again at that time. I understand the request to review it again in 2022 and make a decision administratively, how are we going to move forward with this? I would like to just clarify that I do not see us really having a different form of agreement or a different consultant.
That is potentially the case. I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Marissa?
Yeah, I think for the point of clarification, and particularly my request to the administration and the city attorney, if it's taken 3 attorneys to be confused about this proposal in terms of the scope of it, I would ask that our contract language is much clearer. And personally, I'm comfortable with 2 program years. I think it is appropriate. I think I share the opinion of Chair McGregor on this and what's been communicated here from the city, that it makes sense that next year, between hiring and staffing and building it out, we're not realistically going to be ready to do that. But by the 3rd year, by 2023, I'd like to see more of it in-house. I think just as a practical matter, I think that it's important that we're staffing and appropriately paying benefits to employees that work for us, and just as a sort of matter of principle. But what I'm asking is that it shouldn't be this complicated, and as I read it on pages 1, bottom of page 1, top of page 2 of the proposal, it clearly seems that this proposal is for 3 program years.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is the pushback from council, is that realistically, okay, definitely 2021, probably 2022 for program years, but we need to make sure that we're not being bound into a 9-year contract, which is what it looks like to me. So.
If I may, it would only be a 5-year contract because 2023 would be 2 more years after that. But the way council addresses that is through the budget. I mean, if you guys budget for this for 2022 or budget for this for 2023, that's where it's at. If you don't budget for it, then it's not in 2023.
Unless
But
we obligate
realistically,
ourselves with a
realistically
contract.
speaking, we budget for a department. We budget for an overall program. We don't budget for a contract. So realistically, we can't do that.
You did it this year.
We
You cut it back
budgeted-
to 500,000.
We
and gave them
budgeted
what to work with.
$500,000 for a
Right.
total sidewalk program, including this contract and including the work to be done that will be repaid over assessments.
Right.
So no, we really don't have that oversight through the budget process. And I would just make sure that we're very clear about that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Nancy?
Wait, Jamie's next.
Go ahead, Karen.
John, how much would it cost, equipment-wise, if we take over the project instead? Won't we have to buy cement things and?
Oh, we're not, yeah.
And trucks and all those things? So it might be that EMH&T is giving
they're
us
not
a
doing-
really
they're
good.
not doing
We're not doing
construction.
the actual
Please,
construction.
no.
None of this is
Not doing
construction.
Karen.
Contract.
They're not
This-
building any sidewalks.
Right, this is for
They're
the
inspecting.
administration of the actual program. So it's going to be having their project, EMH&T's inspectors going out inspecting the sidewalks up to the new standards, sidewalk standards that were just adopted as a result of the sidewalk code that was passed. They would do the inspections, they would prepare all the notifications that go to the residents that say, your sidewalk's has been inspected, here's the default or deficiencies that you have. And then tracking all the opt-out notices, the opt-ins, making sure that people are assessed the correct amounts, all of those administrative functions that would need to be performed. But really, it's the expertise of having the inspections performed from the engineering standpoint that I think would be really critical.
Okay, but I'm saying, what I'm trying to say here is that at some point, if we take it over all to ourselves, we're either going to we're going to take on all of the possibilities of what, if we're going to do are we going to do the actual cement work,
No.
et cetera?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, we haven't structured the code for the program or this agreement to actually be performing the work in-house.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jim.
I don't think Mr. Moorhead was actually done answering the questions that he received last week either, because one of the other questions was, are we passing this on to the resident? I believe the answer was, no, we're not. So I guess my question was, why are we not passing this cost onto the residents? Because it is their responsibility. It's their legal responsibility to fix the sidewalk in front of their house. We have the obligation to have a program to make sure that happens, but it is their responsibility to do it. And if I went out and fixed a panel in front of my house on my own without a program, I'd have to interview contractors. I'd have to make sure it got done right. I'd have to pay for it. I'd have to, do cost estimates. I'd have to look at all that stuff myself. So why is someone that's in this program area getting the benefit of us paying $73,000 this year, probably $150,000 next year for free for somebody that is not in the program area doing it on their own? And I'm just wondering, do any of the other municipalities, Westerville or Upper Arlington or anybody else, pass this management? We charge permit fees and things like that, and I know a $200 permit fee doesn't cover your guys' costs. I get that, but we're recouping some of that money. One of our income lines, Joanne, correct me if I'm wrong, is permits and fees. We collect permits and fees for those reasons, and it helps pay for some of the stuff in your department. So I guess that was one of the questions I had. And the other one that we talked about is if construction doesn't happen until next year, we're going to incur costs, hourly costs, bills this year for construction next year, which then has task 9 legislative support, which we have to write and then put on somebody's tax bill probably for 23. So again, we're fronting the cost of the concrete and the management. We're paying the management completely. We're not even pushing that onto the people right now. And we're going to give them a 3% or 3-year 0% loan for potentially one panel, which could be $250. I mean, somebody can't pay $250 out of their pocket to maintain their sidewalk. I get it. We haven't had a program, and it's going to Mr. Lurik's point, it's going to be a shock when I lived in Reynoldsburg 15 years ago. And I woke up one morning and there were 2 big orange X's on my sidewalk. And I called the city and said, hey, somebody came out and tagged my sidewalk. What's this about? They said, hey, you saved us a dime for calling you. You got to fix those sidewalks. Those are your responsibility. Good luck. Let us know when it's done. Period. End of story. That's how Reynoldsburg did it 15 years ago. So I'm not sure why we're paying for the management of it and passing. We're going to have at $73,000 by 219. It's $311 per parcel of management fees for potentially a $250 panel of sidewalk. Now, I don't think the $73,000 is unrealistic for the hours we're going to get and the tasks we're going to get over 3 years. And I don't disagree that we can't do it in-house for $73,000. I think $73,000 is a very reasonable rate for a very qualified firm that does this for lots of people. I guess I get the question, why aren't we passing that on to the people? And that's an administrative, but again, I think it's also a council prerogative. Why are we not passing that cost on to the people?
So could I ask, if we were to do this in-house, would we then pass along staff time in administering this program? Would we be tracking our hours and passing that along as well, if we were to do this in-house?
We instituted a couple years ago a program for rental inspections, and we hired inspectors to do that, and it was self-sustaining.
It was not self-sustaining, actually. That was why we had to revamp the program. That was the problem.
That's not why we revamped it, but anyway, when it was proposed, it was self-sustaining.
It was intended to be. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
It was intended to be. But the realistic nature of it was that we could not charge enough in order to actually make it
It
self-sustaining.
was punitive to some and not fair to the others. I get it. But again, so, I mean, we charge for fence permits, we charge for deck permits, we charge for all these permits for people.
Yes, we do. And they're nominal. I would submit they're nominal. They don't cover, by any means, cover near our staff time. I'm just asking the question, because to your point, Councilman Leesburg, I do believe that would be just as much of a council direction as to whether or not you wanted to administratively pass those costs along. And I would just question what kind of precedent we would be setting if that's the path we want to go down.
If we're going to do it in years later in time, we better do whatever we're doing now in the future, otherwise Mr. Malarski is going to be busy. Because the people that don't get charged for it the first couple of years, the people that we try to charge for it in years 4, 5, and 6 are going to...
Trust me, I'm all about consistency and striving for that.
Absolutely. And again, I would propose that we do that, that we pay for it, that we charge them now.
When the sidewalks are, say they identify this guy has to have 3 panels, do they have to have a permit do they have to get a permit to have those 3 panels done?
If they are opting out of the program, yes, they would. They would get a right-of-way permit through the Public Service and Engineering Department, which is a free permit.
Okay, but if they're in the program, they don't have to get a permit?
Correct. They operate through the city's managed program, and they don't get a permit. We don't issue a permit to the contractor we hire to make the sidewalk repairs.
Okay, all right. All right.
So if I could just, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I know we've spent a lot of time on this, but, I appreciate, Jamie, your comment about why we're not passing this along. And honestly, we are. I mean, people pay taxes to live here, and they pay taxes through their property taxes. They pay taxes through their income taxes. And some of those, do come through to the city. The other side of this is that it has to be somewhat collaborative. This is part of our job. This is part of what we're federally mandated to do, and a service that we're federally required to provide through this management program. Some communities are not passing any costs along to their residents. And if we were in a financial position where we could potentially consider that, I would love to be able to provide this to our residents, through an income tax based program through our tax revenue versus having them to pay it repay it back through an assessment. But I see this as kind of us splitting the cost with our residents. We're taking on some of this overhead and management. $73,000 is an incredibly reasonable amount, as opposed to a full-time employee here. But I guess I would just say I think that the proposal is really trying to meet people as best as we can, using the resources that we have and meeting our obligations as a city. So that's just where I would land.
I would be in favor of this being 2 years. So, I mean, can we change that to be just like this year in 2022 and then come back in 2023? Or is that what it is already? You would still have to come back in 2023 for that program year, right?
Yeah, future program years have to be renegotiated and agreed upon mutually by both the city and the consultant.
Okay, so basically we have this, it's a 3-year, and, okay, all right.
It's a 1 year.
1 year with 2
One program
extensions.
year with an option for 2 additional years to be authorized through.
And you would come back to us and ask us if we want to authorize the further years, correct?
I don't know whether we would. I would say
I'm
it
okay
seems
with.
yes is the appropriate way to proceed with this, just to make sure that we're all running these programs and kind of learning how it operates together, because it's all a first launch of this program. I think there's a lot of questions that will be developed as we go forward, and it's going to be continuing dialogue as to how administratively and legislatively this program should operate.
I guess I don't want to have to go do all this again next year if we're going to do the same thing. It seems like that we should try this for 2 years, and then after that, if you want to do something different, then we would go with a different, but for 2 years anyway. I mean, this year and then one more.
I think we still have a fundamental question, do we want to fund the management of the program? Again, my personal opinion is I don't. And again, whatever you do in year 1, you're going to have to do in perpetuity.
But there's a lot of things, I mean, we don't
I
make.
get it, and that's your
I mean,
opinion, that's fine.
I don't think I want to do that.
Okay.
That's my opinion, but.
The last thing I want to talk about here is so 2 things. And there's a variation between what people are okay with. I'm still first-year plan. That's what I'll accept. So first-year inspection, the 219, across the 3 years, understand the scope of work that needs to be done, and it gets done with coming back to council in '22 for the evaluation and/or the approval to do the '22 work, and going forward for 3 years. As an example, potentially, chargeback in some fashion could be a part of the evaluation of how this program is working. And what I would say is that's not a part of this agreement. That's a part of the program legislation, where there's a charge associated with it. It is not there today. It would be an entirely different step, is what I would expect. Probably need to be reviewed, but I think that's what it would end up being. It would be a part of the program, not a part of this.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, before I forget, to answer your question, I have to advise you, if you pass this, the administration would not have to come back every year and ask you to pass another one. They should, since they brought this forward, but if this were passed, if it were in the budget, they would not have to present it to you. So to answer that question, as long as it's within their budget, they could just proceed with the choosing year 2 and 3. It is an area where they could decide, no, we don't want to do 2, we don't want to do 3, but that would become an administrative decision not a council decision if you pass this, just so you know.
Can we change it at this point to 2 years instead of 3?
I believe so.
Yes.
I
We would have to
don't
go back
remember
to
what the RFP
EMH&T.
was, but yeah.
They would need to do a change of terms,
Yeah.
changing it from whatever is here to a first-year program or whatever ends up getting decided.
For 2021 and 2022.
If
Yeah.
the-
The extension clause here on page 6 would be reduced from the 3 years to 2 years, I believe, would produce.
It's not the way I read it. I don't read it that way. And where I have a problem with it is ambiguity in this is between how it identifies on pages 1 and 2, 3 program years, and then there's ambiguity in the extension clause. So I do think that we need to go back to EMH&T and ask for clarification as to whether we're entering a contract for 2 program years or whether they are expecting us to enter a contract for 3 program years. I think that does need to be clarified.
We are not entering into a contract by this vote. That contract will be approved by me, so if you guys direct me, you're my clients, as to how you want that contract to read, that's how the contract will read.
But if we vote on this as it's proposed to us, if we approve this proposal, then we're saying that whatever has been worked out between the administration and EMH&T is fine by us.
Well, this is a proposal by EMH&T, which we are bringing to you. So there has been nothing worked out
Right.
between the administration and EMH&T. We did an RFP, a request for qualifications. They've responded. We've identified them. We're bringing this to you. So that's where we are at this point. But this is a proposal, not a contract. So I'm going to look to our city attorney from a procedural standpoint in terms of how we could adjust this.
You're authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract. So you tell me what the terms of that contract you want it to be, and that's the contract that we would enter into.
Would it be this proposal with the modifications of
Whatever.
sidewalk program years 2021 and
Yes.
2022 only?
That could be done, yes. You would have to amend the
And
but ordinance.
EMH&T still wants to bid that, like they're still,
We would need to ask them, but we would assume that they would.
Yeah, they could say, well, we don't want it under those terms.
And then we don't have a
They have the right
contract.
to say that, and we have the right to say
I have a
that.
feeling they won't say they don't want it.
Right.
No, and I can speak to.
But we don't have the cost for 2022's program. But, to Ray's point, the administration would not need to come back as long as it's budgeted.
But it would be the same, well, it'd be just with the increases. All right, so is everybody comfortable with 2 years, 2 program years? Two, Marissa, 2 program years, are you comfortable with?
I'm good with that. I think that's
Michael?
Yeah, we're good. That's right.
Stephen?
Well, I like things in a box. Okay, I'm sorry. I like it where it says, this is what we're going to do. That's why I like this proposal. 73,000 over 3 years. It's going to do this program. Now, what I've been hearing, some interesting dialogue about a 2-year, which I have a page of costs. I guess I could, on my own, calculate what that's going to be, but I don't know how many parcels. I don't know how many, or are we saying that it's going to be a piece of this 73,000 to fund 2 more years? I don't think I have that answer before me, so I can't respond.
It would only be for 1 more year, the program 2022, and it would be the same, it would be the number of parcels times, and then the increases according to their,
It'll be based on the council-approved budget. So if the full budget's approved, then it would be larger. So it would have to be renegotiated, because
Right.
it would be it'd be more than the 219.
but the rate that EMH&T charges us could go up some, and then,
Yes.
and then it would be times the number of parcels, it would be based on the number of parcels. Yeah.
The only thing that the contract would hold is the items, is not the items, but the activities of work that they would be doing. Cost is not controlled. Scope of properties is not controlled. None of that is controlled within the way this is written,
Okay.
which is where I'm back to Stephen is correct. This is a box 21 with the work that continues for 22 and 23. We know exactly what's here. Bring it back in 22.
Well, council would have to approve the program area for 2022. So that is by code, we would have to bring the program area for 2022 to you for approval and adoption. So in essence, council could say, we're not comfortable with the program area of that size, we want to cut it back. So there is some control that you would have in terms of the program area and what is embedded within the 2022 program.
Why wouldn't you just bring the whole thing back? Then we can just evaluate what is there in its entirety. It's a simple picture.
Chair, just a clarification as well. So the resolution that we're voting on specifically authorizes the mayor to enter into a contract to administer the 2021 through 2023 sidewalk maintenance programs. So if I'm reading the resolution, it's authorizing the 3 program years, which I just want to be very careful that we are either going to amend this resolution based on the will of council, or we're going to, I mean, it sounds like there's not support of the resolution as it's presented.
We've got to amend it because of the waiving of the second reading anyway, so we could amend it at that. We have to amend it already because of the waiving of the second, but,
Correct.
so we will be amending this, but we got to figure out what we want to amend it to. And I'm not sure there's clear consensus right now.
Michael?
Obviously, there's been some considerable debate on this topic, and I guess I'm kind of a simple guy. I try and boil it down to what are the nuts and the bolts of what we've been talking about here. And again, I go back to, A, we have to move forward with year 1. So I believe there's consensus there. As far as an optional second year, it seems to again be consensus that there will likely need to be a second year for internal staff and processes to get up to speed. Hopefully by year 3, if all goes well, we can bring some of that in-house. If I'm interpreting some of the attachments correctly, there does appear to be a fee schedule and some other things, and just again for efficiency, if you will, and perhaps some certainty when it comes to planning. Calendar year 2022, we'll call it program year B. It may, I don't know, I'm comfortable with moving forward with a revised proposal / revised resolution that permits 2 years under these terms and conditions. So that's kind of where I stand. I don't see the need to bring it back next year. Just again, to kind of alleviate some of the friction that may occur in-house. I know our staff has a lot of things going on. So
There's a line that says they can adjust their pricing. It's
we
just a
budget for
generic
it. I mean, we budget
adjust the
for it,
pricing.
right? We allocate the money.
Nancy?
Yes.
If that's the case, then I would ask the administration to then send us, and for record, that we know what the extra cost is going to be. Because as presented, I don't know what the cost is going to be
For year 2, you mean?
for year 2, right?
Yeah. I don't think they'd have a year 2 because they don't have the project area.
I understand that.
But you mean when the
Oh,
time
but-
comes that we would?
But we do, in essence, we know what size the box program 2 is going to be.
Well,
right?
that's true. If we go back 15 years and look at the,
Yeah.
we can
Funding
get
dependent.
an estimate, could we not?
I mean, assuming that the budget is approved at the request.
Yes.
And the program area is accepted, then
You can
yes, we
qualify
can.
like that, that's fine.
Yeah. Then, yeah, we can get that.
Yeah, we could likely work with EMH&T to estimate the scope of services for 2022. If we also estimate what the budget in 2022 overall will be, we can probably prepare at least a draft agreement to have some box to define around the future year. It would be revised upon the reality of the budget and the reality of what that program area becomes, but we could have some level of estimate of what the 2022 services would be for an estimated 2022 program.
That's fair. Thank you.
Okay. Right.
In addressing that, I'm looking at the ordinance, and so we can add a section 3 that says something along those lines, that the administration shall present to council an approximate cost for the sidewalk program for the year 2020. First, I understand you want it to be amended to 2 years, 2021 and 2022, and then add a third thing that says the administration will present to council the estimates as soon as available for the 2022 year. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
With caution, point of order, that's the reason
Okay.
I'm speaking at this point. With caution, any change that we've just talked about has to be rewritten to the legislation that we're going to vote and pass, whether that's tonight or at another point in time. So if we're doing that, there's a level of work that needs to be done to make that proper and correct.
And we need time to review it.
I'm sorry?
We'll need time to review it. I mean, I don't want it.
I don't
want-
know.
I don't want
That's
it at
purview
four-
of council.
I don't want
but
it at 4:47 on Monday that we're
what-
voting on it.
My only point is, it's not, we'll vote and then update some things. The legislative action needs to be written as expected.
Right.
And if that is expected to be voted tonight, there's work to be done.
That's what I'm trying to clarify. So the
Right.
two things I'm hearing that you want changed, or you want it to be changed for the 2021, 2022 year, and that you want the administration to present an estimated fees for the 2022 year as soon as practical, as soon as received.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, City Attorney. And obviously remove the waiver of second. Sorry.
Right. I was going to put that in section 3, which has a second waiver. So-
So are you sending that back out?
Right now?
Well, as soon as we get it done, yeah, within a day or so.
No, not within a day. We can't vote unless we have legislation
We
of
can't
what
vote
we are
tonight.
doing.
We're not voting tonight. This is committee
I
of the whole.
don't know. Is that the case?
No, this is committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole.
Committee.
Mr. Metzbauer, we don't vote. Mr. Metzbauer, we don't
With all
vote.
due
at committee.
respect, Council President.
My apologies. I knew it was urgent, but
That's why I said, right now?
All right, give him the gavel and let him call a meeting.
I know that discussion
We're in
lasted a
chambers, man.
long
You're
time.
We're not
It wasn't
really in
that-
committee.
I don't like
We're not
doing
really
this
in
in
the
this
committee
room.
room, Brian. I get it.
Get that gavel away from
Michael?
there.
No, I'm not using it. It's just, Nancy's got the gavel.
It felt like a week.
Michael?
We're in chambers, it's formal, Brian, you forget.
Goodness gracious.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do just want to add one qualitative statement. I want to thank my colleagues for moving forward with this. Again, like I said, just boiling it down to some simple, bottom line facts here. I, again, personally see some value in having some contractual terms set, because I guess my concern here is that if we move forward with year one, it's hard to imagine a scenario where we would not move forward with year two. And knowing that we likely will not have the in-house expertise in year two, having some certainty that comes with the contract, obviously there are variables that could change, but having an entity like EMH&T that has helped many other Central Ohio communities do this exact same thing, I think signing up for having the option to sign up for year two makes sense. So that's, again, simple man, boiling it down to a few simple items. It's kind of my spin on it, if you will.
Joanne, if I could, is the $73,000, since it's the 2021 program, already in the budget? Or is this new money? 2021 budget. It's
already
covered in
in
the
the-
$500,000
Yes.
that was given. So we had $500,000 allocated for a sidewalk program this year, which we didn't do any construction, so it's the 73 would be in that, and the 500 would roll over for construction next year.
Correct.
Yes, correct. Yes, the
Okay.
$500,000 total lump sum is intended to cover the 2021 program, construction, and administration costs.
Okay.
So, okay, so this will be on consent agenda?
Regular agenda.
Regular agenda. All
Are you
right.
kidding? Are you kidding?
I can always try.
It was worth a try.
I liked it.
Okay.
Let's just go ahead and pass it tonight.
Next one, okay. Resolution 0033, 2021. This is what we were talking about before, that we would have the ability to adopt what sidewalk maintenance program area we want to do. So Resolution 0033, 2021.
Yes, thank you. This resolution is the administration presenting the proposed 2021 sidewalk program area. So as defined in the codes that were adopted to 52106 earlier this year, the administration establishes a program area and then presents it to City Council for approval through a resolution. So this action item here is council voting to approve the 2021 sidewalk program area, which, if I can get our system to work, I'm going to try to send to your screen here. So this includes, as we've discussed, 219 parcels within the city. Those parcels are shown, they generally follow High Meadow Drive and Empire Drive. As we mentioned, this program area is based on the Federal Highway Administration civil rights investigation. They specifically walked these sidewalks and identified them in particular as being in need of maintenance. So adopting this program area signifies to the Federal Highway Administration that the City of Gahanna has prioritized these areas for maintenance and concludes that item, at least, in their letter of findings with us. So the council action to adopt this program area resolves the Federal Highway's concerns over maintaining these sidewalks. The important thing to note is that we did budget in the 2021 budget for both the construction and administration of an area of this size. So in adopting this, we are expecting to have funded it already through the budget appropriations that were made in the 2021 budget cycle. The follow-up process from this action, passing this resolution, would be to enter into an inspection of these parcels to identify any sidewalk deficiencies that may exist there, and then the preparation of notifications to those adjoining homeowners of the nature of the deficiencies and the estimated cost of repair, as well as information as to how they can track this process through council and what they need to know administratively if they elect to opt out. So passing this resolution simply starts the process of inspecting these areas, which would be work performed by EMH&T through the agreement that we were discussing earlier.
Okay, any questions?
That's eight particular, is that correct? Drives, High Meadow Drive, High Meadow Court, Maybank Court, Granville Court. Am I
Oh,
correct?
yes, I'm sorry. Let me read those off to you. Yes, the streets that are here, the 219 parcels themselves are, thank you, Grant. Sorry, because I'm projecting, I can't see the documents I have in front of me here.
It's High Meadow Drive between Morse Road and Brook Hill, High Meadow Court to the cul-de-sac, and then Maybank Court to the cul-de-sac, Granville Court to the cul-de-sac. Same thing with Paddington, Gatwick, Ashburnham, and then Empire Drive, of course.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right, back to my agenda here. Okay, so,
I'm sorry, I do have a question. I'm not sure if I missed this or not. How will the program area be set in future years? I think that was one of the questions that I had asked before.
Yes, thank you. There were a couple of clarifications. The program area in future years is expected to be based off of previous year's street programs. In those locations, the city has already improved the crosswalks on these street intersections so that they have accessible ramps, they have accessible crossings. So what we've done preliminarily is estimated back to, I believe, the 2012 street program and made an estimate going forward of what future sidewalk program areas would be. So we do have an estimate approximately of what the future sidewalk areas would be. The way we would go about establishing that is working on the bid prices for our previous year's street program to understand what the cost of sidewalk maintenance and repair in Gahanna would be. We would then look at those areas and do as much as we could with the money that had been budgeted and include as many properties as possible, then establish a map similar to this and bring it to council with a request to approve the future program area.
Thank you.
okay,
Just to underscore that a little bit, so if someone had their street done, redone, repaved, rebuilt, if it's a Detroit-style street in, let's just say hypothetically, calendar year 2022, they could reasonably expect the sidewalks to be, is it repaired, constructed, or examined in 2023?
If they had the work done in 2022, we would likely not get to a sidewalk program in that area for likely the next 5 years. We're going backwards in time to previous street programs where the work has already been done, and we're catching up to the current
Okay, thank you.
year.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, This will be on consent agenda? Okay. All right, thank you. Next one, Resolution 0034, 2021.
Thank you. This item is a resolution authorizing the Ohio Department of Transportation, authorizing the mayor to agree to allow the Ohio Department of Transportation to operate a project within city limits. It is also consent legislation, so it's both the mayor's authorization and city council legislation to consent to ODOT conducting a project within the city of Gahanna limits. You'll note that this is referencing FRA 317-1668. That is a bridge over Big Walnut Creek between the airport and Tech Center Drive. So if you've driven that way recently, there is a significant disrepair in the concrete deck of that bridge. This program through ODOT is expected to resurface that deck. Now, the program legislation here is initially dated on June of 2021. What occurred with this is we received the legislation, and then in follow-up questioning to them to clarify what exact scope they expect to occur in the city of Gahanna, we did get some answers from them in the last month to provide the plans for that project, clarify that the work being done is, within Gahanna at least, is simply maintenance of traffic efforts on Tech Center Drive. There will be lanes being closed and traffic being shifted as they work on the bridge deck. So we are operating as an LPA, local public agency in ODOT speak, whereas they are in this consent legislation seeking City of Gahanna to agree to certain terms for their project. Those terms in this case is the right to use Gahanna right-of-way. There's no cost associated with the city. There's no staff time expected to be expended as this project moves forward. It is simply authorizing ODOT and their contractors to make use of Gahanna's right-of-way to implement this bridge repair.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay. You okay with this one on consent?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, I believe this ends Committee of the Whole. Prepare for Finance.
Crystal, if you'll let me know when you're good to go.
I apologize. I tried to waive Nancy before you closed the meeting. Regarding Ordinance 52, do you all have a deadline for when you want that updated exhibit, that updated contract? Jamie had mentioned he didn't want to get that the night of the meeting on Monday. So is there another deadline you want to put in place?
Like end of day Friday? Wednesday? This Wednesday, like 2 days from now? I don't know. Ray, what do you think? Can we?
No.
No, just when, with the new ordinance for that program? You know, you were going to write the new, when do you think?
So typically, I submit the agenda for approval to Brian on Thursday at the latest, and so that's Thursday evening. The administration typically gets me their documents by end of day on Thursday. If that gives you all enough time to review it so that I could have the agenda published on Friday, that would work for me.
Okay. So end of day Thursday? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And Michael, I'm ready when you're ready.
Council, you guys have some gas left in the tank here? Yep. All right. So with that,
30 pages of it.
let's commence Finance Committee for September 13th, 2021. We just have one item on the agenda this evening. That is the quarterly report. And with that, Director Burry, you have the floor.
Thank you. Before we jump into numbers tonight, I wanted to do a report out of an ongoing project. If you remember back in 2018, we authorized the implementation of a new accounting system. It was going to be a 3-year project. We're
Excuse me.
coming towards the end of that.
Excuse me. Could we do this afterwards? It's kind of distracting. Thank you.
So we are now coming to the end. We almost have everything implemented. So I just kind of wanted to give an overall summary of what we've been able to accomplish. So in 2018, we didn't want to put old processes into a new system. So we had to reevaluate every process that we did, accounts payable, accounts receivable, reconciling, HR, payroll, trying to figure out how we could gain some efficiencies and make this work to our advantage. So over here, you will see a sample of the amount of paper that finance used to produce. This is just a very small fraction of what we would produce every year with our legacy system. So the other area that we've been able to make some efficiencies is with our accounting structure. We completely overhauled our accounts. We were able to drop them from 798 individual accounts down to 488. What that does is streamline not only the budget process, but also just the overall monitoring and processing of information. The other thing that we were able to do is decentralize. So prior to this system, individuals would come with their papers of POs and invoices to be paid. So all that unnecessary movement of people and things between departments and buildings. When you think about those that are working out at the Oklahoma area, they would have to get all their stuff together, drive over, dump the papers in the accounts payable clerk's bin to be entered. Because it was paper and a lot of people weren't going back to the system to look, a lot of times those purchase orders wouldn't have enough money, there wouldn't be enough budget, so now we got dialogue kind of going back and forth, some more unnecessary, inefficient ways to process. So now departments receive their invoices, they scan them in, they enter them for payment, they have real-time access to what their PO balances are, real-time access to their budget. That all comes through electronic workflow to the finance department for review, approval, and release. We are also able to move budget transfers, journal entries, PO change orders, all now done electronically through the system. So what does all that mean? Well, just along with this stack of paper, we were able to get rid of 3 filing cabinets. We were able to clear 6 shelves full of boxes of paper because as those retention periods came up, there were no new records to fill those spaces. Not to only mention the staff time that we've been able to save with efficiencies, again, of stopping that movement of paper and people back and forth. We just recently did the payroll piece in July. As you can imagine, as a service organization with 3 union contracts and 1 unclassified ordinance, plus of all of our elected members, that's the most complex part of the system. And the other thing that we did was when we moved over, we also wanted to make sure that we were moving as much away from manual entry as possible to reduce errors, save staff time. So as HR was kind of programming their piece and we were looking at the payroll piece, they created the employee self-service. We were able to get rid of direct deposit devices. Those are all electronic now. Able to automate some of that entry onboarding of individuals. So it comes feeding over from NeoGov. They're tied to that position, so there's nobody sitting there going, okay, this is the employee, how many deductions they need to have, what pay codes they need to have, what cycle should they be on. A lot of that's automated. So as we're moving forward with implementing payroll and then eventually the new timekeeping and scheduling piece, we're going to continue to update those processes and find out some more areas that we could automate versus manual entry, really gaining on those efficiencies. It's also a much more robust reporting system. So a lot of the state reporting, federal reporting that we have to do can be just pulled from the system without a lot of reformatting like we had to do with our legacy system. As we move to the timekeeping and scheduling piece, we'll be able to eliminate the last of the paper timesheets in the city. So there is still our public safety group that does paper timesheets, which requires a lot of time for individuals to go over, review, then they have to come over to us for manual keying. So their scheduler will feed into the timekeeping system, will feed into Munis. So getting rid of those paper timesheets and all of that manual keying. So very happy that we were able to do this. Very long process. Wouldn't have been possible without a lot of champions. Ellen Orr, Pam Ripley, Jennifer Hamilton, Jill Webb, Peyton Odell, all of HR, all of finance, all of IT, spending hours with me in the finance conference room going over these processes and trying to figure out how to make things better. So at the end, we'll see how efficient we could become. I'm excited to see what else we can do, and I hope I never have to do this again, because it was very time-consuming, and my head still hurts. So with that, does anybody have any questions about the new system?
Well, Joanne, I have to tell you, when we didn't get our paychecks, as
Well,
little
you-
as we have, it was kind of, going, well, this is kind of strange. And then when I picked it up and it would look totally different, is there any possibility that when it comes to something like this, that we could get some kind of previous knowledge that we're working on this and it's going to look different? You know what I'm saying?
Yep, I would periodically bring
Because I
updates.
was
in the
trying to figure it
quarterly
out,
report.
because I'm going, I don't even know what this is. And that they gave me, $5 more than what I had been getting in the past. And I have no idea how that could happen. And so if you could do that, that would make, it would make me feel a whole lot better that I was not going crazy.
Yeah, so with any time you go live, I don't know if you've done any type of accounting system changeover during your time.
I don't recall ever having one.
Yeah, we've tested, retested, tested over again. It's kind of difficult to get every type of scenario under your belt. So there are some blips along the way when you go live. We try to reduce those as much as possible, and I think we did a pretty good job. But it's a huge transition, a large implementation project, and no matter how much you test, you can't hit every scenario.
Yeah, well, thank you. If you could just kind of keep that in mind. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Are they going to catch up with the deductions we had, or how, because we got a check that didn't have all the deductions, so.
Yes, that'll be on the next one. We'll make up those
Okay.
deductions that were missed.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else on the accounting system? No? All right, Joanne.
All right, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I know everybody's probably as tired as I am. So going into Q2, we're going to talk about the general fund first. We had actual revenues of about $13.6 million. Some of the highlights, taxes are 64% of planned, and we'll hit on that a little bit later. We're going to talk specifically about income tax. Property taxes were 74%. And that's the distribution. It's biannually. We got our first one in March. We'll get the second one in the third quarter in August. Intergovernmental revenue, 71% of planned. This is mainly local government fund revenue, which is based on the health of the state's general revenue sources. So this indicates that there might be some recovery. If their general revenues are up, our LGF goes up, which means that they must be doing fairly well. Interest and investment earnings are 90%. Those are maturities that secured. We received about 60% of that in the first quarter. So this is going to fluctuate, and we'll talk about that in the investment area. The other taxes, which is basically our lodging taxes, are only at 42% of planned, but we have seen a slight uptick in the second compared to the first quarter. The first quarter was only 13% of planned, so we've kind of made up some ground there. General fund revenues compared to 2020. There's been an increase of 11% or $1.3 million, again, mainly due to the income taxes that we'll discuss here in a minute. And just as a reminder, and we'll talk about it further on, there was an extension for filing. So last year, if you remember, as part of the emergency legislation, they could file in July rather than April. But we'll hit on that a little bit more when we get to that income tax section. We have fines and fees decreased, but not really. This is part of the activity that we moved to the special revenue funds. If you remember, there were a lot of cancellations, a lot of events that did not happen. So those special funds built quite a bit of unreserved balance. So we took advantage of that and shifted some more items there to use up some of that unreserved balance. Intergovernmental revenue is up 23%, as discussed. That's local government funds. And then interest and investment income, we expected it to decline, and it did, by 47% or $253,000. And then the other taxes are down 21%. Again, we are making up some ground, though, so the kind of difference is we're kind of seeing a little uptick this year at the same time we were kind of seeing things go down last year. General fund expenditures are $10.1 million. Through the second quarter, and they're 39% of planned. When you take in the encumbrances into account, they're 56%. Compared to 2020, general fund expenditures have decreased by 5%, and there's some reasons for that. Salaries and benefits, as I reported on my Q1 report, we had a 3-pay month in that first quarter because of how we're paid biweekly. Some months will have 3 pays. Through the second quarter, we haven't hit that 3-pay month yet. So kind of backing that out of the equation, we're at about a 4% increase, which was expected with the vacancies that we were going to fill and new positions and increases in benefits and so on and so forth. Materials and supplies are down $267,000. This again is related to that kind of movement of activity over to the special funds. And then contract services increased 10%. This is related to a payment to the CIC for the land bank program that we didn't have occur through the second quarter of last year. Capital outlay will continue to decrease, as you'll see through the second quarter. This is just the runoff of those carryover encumbrances from old projects, old programs. So that'll continue to run itself out. There was a slight increase in transfers. This was anticipated for separation payments for 2021. And then to recap the general fund balance, we have an increase of about $3.6 million to $23.8 million by the end of the quarter. Of that, $4.6 million is reserved for encumbrance and $5.9 million is reserved for emergency. That leaves us with $13.3 million unreserved, which is about 8 months of operating expenditures, more than the 2 months set by policy. I'm going to kind of attack the other funds as kind of one.
Joanne. I'm
Yeah.
Just pause one moment.
Yep.
Question, please.
Oh, sure.
Sorry to stop you on your roll. You're going pretty quickly here. Intergovernmental revenue is up 23%, mainly related to an increase in local government funds. Is that right?
Correct.
Do you know if that's anticipated to continue throughout the calendar year and next year?
Hope so.
Okay.
I think, the state, their general revenues, they do have some more stability versus local governments. They do have the sales tax that could kind of compensate for some of those other areas that may decline, such as income tax or the commercial activity tax. So they have a little bit more flexibility. They have more revenue sources to draw on. So I'm hopeful that they'll continue on the path that they're on, and we should see that progression through the end of the year.
Thank you.
I'll just note their income tax base is also broader than local governments, which is
Yes.
kind of curious. But anything else from council? All right. Thanks, Joanne.
Yep. So the next three, as far as revenue sources, a lot of that's related to the income tax. The one thing that I did want to point out for Parks and Recreation is the nice rebound of charges for services. They were able to have that full year of activities and events, so you could really see that rebound there in the Parks and Recreation Fund. As far as expenses, in the Public Safety Fund, we're down compared to planned. We're only at 39%, but that's that switch out for the SRO officer. As that replacement came, we kind of changed that distribution as they assigned Marvin's replacement. Parks and Recreation, again, you'll notice that they're only at like 23% of plan, but that's as they're moving through their season, that will become closer as they're paying those salaries and benefits out through the third quarter for all those programs and events. Public service was pretty much what you'd expect. Nothing out of the ordinary there to discuss. On the capital improvement fund side, we have about 4% spent to date, but we have the majority of it already encumbered. Again, looking at the contract season, kind of when those things occur and when invoices will come in. So through the second quarter, we're kind of dealing with those equipment replacement programs, the smaller based programs with some runoff invoices from last year. As we move into the third and fourth quarter, we'll see those construction invoices being paid and more being spent. So now we're going to go ahead and flip past a lot of the detail, unless anybody has questions on that before I get to income tax. Questions? Okay. So just kind of want to give you a breakdown of the income tax to date. We received about $17.4 million spread between the funds at 60% or close to 10.5 million go into the general fund, about 5.1 to the capital improvement fund, 669 to public safety, about 738 to public service, and about 308 to parks and recreation, and kind of giving those percentage breakdowns there. As you can see, we're pretty much at that 60-40 split at this point, so we're pretty much rolling at pretty good compliance. Looking at the breakdown between withholding, net profit, so we're still the bulk, 69% is from business withholdings, 18% from net profits, and 12% from individuals. So no change in the majority of that being the withholding tax. Just wanted to kind of talk about what we talked about in the beginning, that it appears that, you know, we're leaps and bounds over where we were in Q2, but that's basically related to the filing process. Pushing that out to July or the third quarter of 2020, a lot of those net profit filers didn't come in until then. A lot of the individuals took advantage of that extension. So when we get into Q3, I think we'll have a better picture of how we're actually producing. It's very hard to compare the two quarters based on that extension that happened in 2020. And then kind of looking at where are we with the future of income tax and knowing all the changes that have occurred between the emergency legislation and lawsuits and the state budget bill. So if you recall, the emergency legislation basically directed employers to withhold as if employees were still reporting to work. It was meant to create some revenue stability for local governments. That's currently still being fought through the courts. And in addition, with the budget bill, they basically said, employers, continue what you're doing. You know, if you want to keep on withholding as if they're reporting, go ahead. But you as the individual, you have an opportunity to request a refund of those withholdings if you didn't live or work in that municipality where they assess those withholdings. They also said in 2022, it's business as usual. We're back to Ohio Revised Code 718. So what does all that mean for us? So if the current lawsuit rules in favor of the plaintiffs, they'll be allowed to request refunds all the way back to March of 2020. So when you think logistically about what happened in 2020, we ended with a net increase to our fund balance of about $3 million, but we brought in about $18.2 million in income tax. Might as well consider that we've spent all that 2020 money. So if this lawsuit is in favor of them and they're allowed to request refunds all the way back to March of 2020, we're basically refunding that with our current collections. So it's going to chip away at our current income tax stream that's coming in. Same thing when it comes to the allowability for the employer to continue withholding as is. How many individuals are going to just request a refund for 2021 because they didn't live or work where that withholding was? Again, those refunds will come through on the 2022. So again, chipping away at future income tax dollars.
And I think there's probably something to be said that this, we're not sure yet, but I guess, doesn't that also enable Gahanna to collect income tax for people who?
We're going to get there.
Okay. Didn't.
We're going to get there. It's administratively burdensome.
You were painting a grim picture, and I'm not sure that that's.
Still kind of is, and I'll explain that as we're kind of going through.
Okay.
So we do know as far as our withholding tax, this could have an impact because as companies are deciding how they want to operate, we have some that are going fully remote. We have some that are going to a hybrid. We have some that are going to remote, coming in the office on occasion, some staff reporting every day. So that's a huge administrative burden on an employer to track all those places where their employees are working. And if they choose not to do that and not withhold, it does not remove that liability from that individual. That individual is still responsible for paying where they worked. The problem is, how are you going to enforce that? So it's a very, Taxpayer Protection Act is very serious. We can't go prying into our local employers and saying, you know, what's your plan? They could offer it to us, and we are trying to get some of that information. as far as what they are planning on doing, but they don't have to give us any of that information. It's strictly on them to track and withhold. It's the individual's responsibility if withholding wasn't made to request the correct refunds, get that money, and then pay it to the correct municipality. The problem that you have on that also is that the employer has to certify on that refund request that that employee did not work in that area. So now you have kind of a paper bottleneck, right? So how many of these refunds are going to come through? When are they going to come through? Are employers actually going to certify them correctly? And then on the flip side of that, how do we know who's working from home in Gahanna? We have no way to enforce compliance with that either.
I mean, people are they're gonna have to pay taxes someplace. If they're
Right.
working from home, why wouldn't they pay their local municipality?
You would hope they would.
I guess,
But how do you enforce it if they're not?
because I guess.
And how do you know?
One time, we had an incident that my husband was working out of town quite a few times, and so we requested a refund from the city of Columbus because he wasn't in for weeks and weeks and weeks. We did that, and we got a refund from Columbus, but immediately we got a notice from Gahanna, you have to pay or we're going to issue you a warrant.
Right.
For your, and so we
If you
paid,
right.
but it was,
Yeah. And if you wouldn't have requested the refund, would
You wouldn't
anybody have
know.
known any different?
right, no. So I know that that's one thing that Columbus notified Gahanna that these people had asked for a refund, and so that they knew to do that. Do they do that in this still? I don't know. That was 40 years ago.
That's part of the enforcement process that we're going to have to figure out alongside Rita. We have limited capability to do it without infringing on some people's rights or what they may consider an infringement on their rights. Income tax is very complex. We don't know how many individuals or even know that they're supposed to be doing this. Those that do, are they going to request a refund? Or are they not? Or are they going to say, we'll just let my employer do what they're doing and we'll just continue on with our life? So that's kind of where it becomes, there's a lot of variables outside of our control and a lot of difficulty when it comes to trying to enforce. But we'll work alongside Rita and figure out the best way to tackle it. But with that, it would be nearly impossible to try to quantify what all this means because there's so many things that are not within our control.
Anything further from council on that topic?
Are we expecting any more monies from whatever act is now, was,
The ARP?
yeah, there's one that's the one from the state. The state has
That's federal money that's directed through the state.
to 50,000 and below, to townships, cities, 50,000 and below. Are we expecting any more?
Well, we got our first tranche. We'll get
Yeah,
our
but
second tranche
I think there's
in a
another
year.
now.
They do not have that calculated yet. So the last notification that I received was that the state was trying to reach out to those who had not responded at all to find out if
They
they.
had to respond by a certain date.
September
extend-
24th, I believe, is
Yeah,
the date.
they extended it because they wanted to have more time to reach out to those townships and other non-entitled units of government, because it wasn't just townships. There were some cities who
No,
didn't,
city, yeah, 50,000.
who didn't request the funding either. So they've asked for more time to reach out to
You
those
didn't?
who didn't.
You didn't try to get it? I know
We,
Mifflin Township
they're-
has.
they haven't opened up for those who didn't request the funding. They haven't opened that up to us yet. So we received the first tranche. We received notification that they were going to extend the period that they were going to allow those non-entitled units of government to request the funding. And then once they felt fairly comfortable that it was not going to go out, that those individuals truly do not want it, then we'll have the ability to request a redistribution of those that was not claimed by the other non-entitled units of government. But for right now, we have no way to request that yet. We only requested our first tranche, which we did get.
Yeah,
Ms. Bowers?
Yeah, just really quickly, thank you so much for presenting all of this to us, and it's a lot to go through, and just, I just want to make sure that before I am critical, I want to make sure I am very clear that in my appreciation. I just want to be careful that I hope that we we'll maybe get updates as things kind of progress between discussions with how is the city going to perhaps collect or pursue local income tax for people who have been living and working here. You know, I guess one of the concerns that I have, and I think, you know, there's a lot of frustration that we live here, we use services here. Service costs have increased because people have been home. Roads are used more locally with people, you know, spending more time at home. Our parks are certainly being used more wonderfully, you know, and we're grateful for all of that. You know, I am confident that we will be able to look back just 2 years ago, prior to when issue 12 went into effect, and be able to identify taxpayers who had that 16% obligation to the city of Gahanna, and perhaps send them letters of inquiry, or hey, you didn't file a return, and see what happens. And that's, I know that I've gotten letters like that.
Well, the filing the return is a little bit different than withholding. So yes, there is enforcement. You are required to file an annual tax return as a resident of the city of Gahanna. When it comes to the withholding piece, you know, we have to rely that employers are doing what they're supposed to do as employers when it comes to compliance with the law. And then we also have to rely on the fact that our residents do truly understand the income tax legislation, and understand that the fact that their employer did not withhold does not waive their liability to pay that withholding tax where they worked. So there's the filing requirement, yes, we enforce that, they're required to do it. When it comes to withholding, we're more kind of at the will of those employers and those individuals that they understand the law and they're going to apply it correctly.
Anything?
I remain confident in the ability of our finance department and Rita to be able to determine the appropriate path to make sure that local income taxes are paid to the entity to which they're owed.
Anything further from council on the quarterly report?
No, sir.
Joanne, I do have just a question, and if you don't know the answer, that's fine. I understand it's somewhat complex, but that the phenomenon that you were describing where because of the extension last year, that Q2 year-over-year comparison is odd. I mean, it results in some pretty shockingly large, you know, year-over-year increased numbers. Do you have a ballpark guess of whether or not we are up, flat, down, year-to-date?
I'll know more once I get Q3 done. That's
Okay.
really going to be the true picture.
Sure.
We should get our last advance from Rita should be here on the 15th.
Okay.
So I can do a quick analysis and just send out to council even before my Q3 report that says, you know, here's how we kind of stand
Okay.
Q3, and then I could explain it further when I bring the Q3 report
Yeah,
forward.
just curious how we're tracking. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're going to know in 2 weeks officially, I don't know that you got to do a ton of homework on it, but if those numbers are readily available, I'd certainly like to see them.
Okay.
Anything from council?
Can we put some heat in here?
Tell me, I know.
I have to tell you, this is like, you know, beyond. This is the worst I think I can ever
We're
remember.
putting in the budget next year, it's a 3-year contract, but I don't know for sure.
One, two.
Thus
two,
concludes
three.
finance.
One,